All right, as promised, we will cross back now live to Cape Town in Parliament, where, of course, the oral questions to the security cluster are being conducted in the National Assembly. Let's cross live to Cape Town.
Management agency and the work that's being done to try and tighten up the borders, but it really is deeply concerning that no one in Home Affairs, not the Minister, the Deputy Minister or the DG, can tell you exactly how many illegal immigrants are in South Africa. That is a big concern. There are possibly millions of illegal immigrants roaming freely in South Africa. And the reason that we are in this situation is because our borders are poorly controlled and illegal foreigners are just streaming through at their leisure. Then, in addition to this, the other problem is that the department's inspectorate division is also very, very poorly resourced and cannot effectively police the country and apprehend the possible millions of illegal immigrants who are here already. Now, these new regulations, Honourable Chair, is not going to solve this problem, and I'll tell you why. It's only going to worsen the situation because the regulations is going to force those people who want to enter the country legally to simply slip through under the fence because those are where the gaps are. Now, you cannot solve this problem by attending to one without attending to the other problem. Unless you're going to strengthen the inspectorate division, only then you're going to be able to address the problem. I appreciate the response about the Border Management Agency. We'll await the outcome of the work that they're doing and we'll respond at that stage. But can the Honourable Minister tell us what plans are in place to make sure that you strengthen the inspectorate division so that we can eradicate ourselves of the possible millions of illegal foreigners already in the country?
Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much. I think when making statements about the number of illegal immigrants, clearly the whole point of being illegal is that you don't come to Home Affairs to register yourself, which is why we don't know how many there are. However, based on experience with the recent Zimbabwean special dispensation that the department was engaged with, when we were told that, I don't know if it was a mess, because the truth of the matter is it's been highly successful. And if you look at the recent pronouncements, particularly by the Zimbabwean communities in South Africa, they're very, very appreciative of the way in which Home Affairs particularly has handled the special dispensation. The figures bandied about in terms of just the Zimbabwean nationals prior to the ZDP process range from between 2 and 3 million. The number of people who eventually came forward to taking advantage of the moratorium against deportation and, of course, giving up any fraudulent documentation they may have acquired was around 270,000. So I think we mustn't be irresponsible about banding these numbers, particularly because if DHA doesn't know how many illegal people there are in the country, neither do you. In regard to the issue of border management, I think we, again, must be responsible in the way that we articulate some of these issues. Yes, they're huge challenges. We have very large borders. Many of the fences and so on are in a total state of disrepair. However, there are multi-pronged efforts to ensure the security of our border line as opposed to the border per se. And there are initiatives to look at the maritime border, which is another big area that historically has not been dealt with. Part of the program of action in relation to the BMA is that we hope to be able to devise an integrated approach deploying both technology as well as security capacity under one agency so that there is coordinated policing on our borders. The Honourable Member, though, is quite correct in relation to the inspectorate and the lack of capacity there.
Honourable Member, your time for answering the question is over.
Thank you very much.
The Honourable Hooson, you've asked, so there's no other supplementary question? No. We move to question number 34, which has been asked by Honourable S.J. Nkomo to the Minister of Home Affairs, and the issue is now left with Honourable Esther Raisen. The Honorable the Minister, the Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. The response to the question is that the Electoral Commission has received no evidence of fraud relating to the use of VEC4 forms during the recently conducted national and provincial elections. On election day, sporadic reports of shortages of that form at some voting stations were indeed received. The National Party Liaison Committee discussed this matter and recommended that persons who wished to vote using the Section 24A procedure should be allowed to vote for as long as such persons could adduce proof of registration before the proclamation date of the elections. The Electoral Commission, together with political parties participating in the National Party Liaison Committee, took that decision together and jointly, and there was general agreement. However, on the issue of fraud, there were no such cases presented. Thank you.
The Honorable Esther Raisin.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Honorable Deputy Minister, it has been alleged that there was widespread VEC4 voting fraud that took place, particularly in KwaZulu-Natal. Would you care to comment on this particular allegation and advise this House as what you and the IEC are doing in respect of this investigation, this matter, and when you expect your investigation to be concluded? Thank you.
Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. Just to say, Honourable Member, that as I said in the response, there's been no reported cases to the IEC of actual fraud related to these forms. If Honourable Members do have any evidence in this regard, I think the proper procedure would be to raise it with the IEC in order that those allegations may be investigated and dealt with. Our understanding is that out of a total number of approximately 18.4 million voters, only 9.6% of those actually were voters using those forms. So even if every single one of the voters who had used those forms had done so fraudulently, which we're disputing, the point is it wouldn't materially affect the national elections per se, but you're raising KwaZulu-Natal in particular, and I'm assuming that you have certain evidence and certain facts on which you base your allegations, and my suggestion would be that you come forward with that information. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Figlen of the DA.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. The shortage of VE4 forms in many voting stations across the country pose a huge inconvenience to voters, and many of them choose not to vote because they had to wait long hours for the IEC to deliver these forms. What is surprising is that in the last general election, exactly the same thing happened, and once again, the IEC was not equitable, prepared for this. Has there been any investigation into the matter, and what steps are being taken to ensure that this situation does not occur again in the next general elections? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much. And to the Honourable Member, I think the IEC can only be as prepared as the voting roll and the numbers dictate. If parties choose to bus in a number of supporters from one VD to the other because the queues are very long, etc., well, that particular VD then runs out of supplies of that particular form. In this election, what had happened, as I said in my response, was that the Party Liaison Committee was communicated with and a general agreement reached that those voters who were indeed laboring under the lack of those particular forms would still be able to vote because the barcodes would then be scanned and they would be assessed as to whether in fact they had registered as voters. So that arrangement was in place, And as far as we can tell, that worked out fairly well in those stressed VDs. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Singh.
Thank you very much, Honourable Speaker. Honourable Deputy Minister, 9.8% may not be large in terms of numbers, but it's 1.8 million. And sometimes 1.8 million makes a big difference in specific areas, but not countrywide. But, Madam Speaker, I mean, the VEC forms are known to have been open to abuse because there are members, although their IDs are scanned, there is no particular record kept at different stations that Mr. X or Mrs. Y have voted. And that is because we do not have an electronic voting system. The only check and balance is the ink, which I am told can be erased minutes after you leave a voting station. So what I'd like to know, is the Department of Home Affairs going to assist the IEC in ensuring that we move towards an electronic voting system, or we move towards a system where proper records are kept of people who use the VEC as a voting mechanism? Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much. I'm not sure about the allegation about the ink, but I'd be very pleased to hear from the honourable member if that can be done within minutes, because I must say mine was rather unsightly on my fingers. But just to say, I think that the point made related to the provincial imbalance, if they indeed the numbers would necessarily skew those outcomes, and I concede that should there, of course, be some basis on which those allegations are made. And at this stage, the IEC has got no such evidence, and no such facts have been put before the IEC. In addition to which, I think it's a bit mischievous to say that records are not kept. I can tell you that the reason why we know that 9.6% of the voting population use the forms is because records are kept. And so we definitely need to just nuance some of those things. As to electronic voting systems, I take it that that would be a matter that will be dealt with here in this House, and members themselves will make that decision. Thank you very much.
The Honorable Mashile.
Thanks, Deputy Minister, for the response given. Honorable Deputy Minister, as this responsibility lies in the Electoral Commission, we as the leader of society, what advice you can give the honorable members, what role parties play in the elections, and how they can use the party liaison committees and the electoral court to resolve election challenges? I thank you.
Deputy Minister.
A point well taken, Madam Speaker. I do think that the whole idea behind having these structures is so that political parties can raise their concerns and issues at these structures, in order to speak directly to the IEC. Of course, that doesn't necessarily mean that every time you raise an issue as a party that the other parties would support you. And I think this has been part of the problem with regard to the VEC processes. I believe the Inkatha Freedom Party has consistently said that they did not want such a process, but none of the other parties had supported. And I think this is where we find ourselves in this matter. And again, nothing stops the IFP from raising it yet again. And I'm sure that if facts are presented around any challenges that have been found to have materialized, parties would be persuaded. Thank you very much.
We now come to question number 19, which has been asked by the Honorable P.J. Groenewald to the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans. The Honorable the Minister.
Thank you, Chairperson, and thank you, Honorable Groenewald, for the question. As indicated in my budget vote in 2014 budget speech, the Defense Review has noted a mismatch in the resourcing of the South African National Defense Force and its increasing commitments over the past 20 years. The department is currently putting in place capacity requirements for the implementation of the Defense Review of 2014 in anticipation of its finalization by Parliament. Part of this plan requires that whilst the Chief of the South African National Defence Force should develop a military strategy, force design, and the year-on-year requirements in terms of the review, the Secretary of Defense will then, on the basis of the foregoing, develop the defense funding model as well as the long-term strategic acquisition strategy. These will then be incorporated into the normal planning cycle of government over a number of medium-term strategic frameworks. I thank you.
The Honorable Groenewald.
Agbare Speaker, ek wil vir die agbare minister sê, u weet wat sy nou gesê het is niks niets nie. Sedert 2001 word daar in hierdie raadsaal gesê dat daar 'n ernstige tekort ontstaan in die Suid-Afrikaanse nasionale weermag. Now, Honorable Minister, now you're talking about strategy, capacity building, and I think we can add a lot of other words also, but it does not answer the question. The question is, at this moment, what is done to ensure that there's enough money that the South African National Defence Force can do its job? When it comes to the VIP section, where the President and the ministers are flying around, and even if I read in the newspapers that when the Chief of the South African National Defence Force fly first class for 100,000 rand to attend a conference, then it seems there's enough money. But when it comes to the real soldiers, then we have a problem. There's not enough money for fuel to ensure our pilots fly enough hours to have proper training. And every time, you yourself, Honourable Minister, said that there's a 24% shortage at this moment. What are we doing about it? What is Cabinet doing about it? Because I don't want for the next 10 years to hear but we're addressing the issue. Thank you.
Time has expired. Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Groenewald. Honourable Groenewald, you are correct. The Defence Force over the past 20 years has had very serious shortages in terms of its financial resources. And we all know the reason is that the focus in the past 21 years has been on the socio-economic needs of the majority of South Africans. And now that those matters indeed are being attended to, and now that strides have been made to address those problems, a decision was then taken to embark on a defense review process. And you know very well that you cannot submit a business case, a requirement to National Treasury without a well-motivated business case. We're now developing a proper business case based on the Defense Review report. And we are hopeful that National Treasury will give us this money. We have made submissions already to National Treasury. In fact, in September, there is a workshop between National Treasury and the department to try and clarify some of the areas which are not as clear to them related to our financial requirements. So there is something that is being done about it, but you and I would know just how difficult at times the processes can be to secure money. Meanwhile, we're trying our best to make sure that we implement the austerity measures which were directed by National Treasury. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Menir.
Speaker, the Defence Force, I'm sure the Minister will agree, is often its worst enemy when it comes to increasing the defence budget, precisely because of the huge amount of wasteful expenditure, which is symbolized by the Chief of the Defence Force, General Solly Shoke, who seems to have developed an appetite, not only for traveling on Emirates, but for traveling first class on Emirates. Now, we all understand that the Chief of the Defence Force has got a tough job and he needs what Emirates calls a little bit of me time. But I'm sure the Minister agrees that me time on Emirates at the cost of more than 100,000 Rand is simply wrong. And so my question to the Minister is, what is she doing to ensure that the military command tighten their belts rather than widen their belts and comply with cost containment measures set out by the National Treasury so that we do not have to increase the defence budget? I thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Mainir. I'm actually surprised that you are coming in to raise this matter because question 17, which is raised by yourself, actually demands it's that kind of question and demands that response which you expect me to give to you right now. So I will wait for the time when you raise this matter. Right now, the issue was, at this point in time, I will wait for a follow-up matter on the shortages of finances related to the defense review. You better stop the excitement and just keep quiet. Just keep quiet. And thank you, honourable members.
Thank you.
Point of order.
What's your point of order, sir?
Deputy Speaker, it's not up to the Minister to determine what she will and will not answer. We may not get to the Honourable Mainier's question down the order paper. He has asked a supplementary follow-up. The supplementary follow-up is in order, and the Minister must answer it now in the House.
Honourable Mainir.
Unfortunately, Honourable Chief Whip, with due respect, the question raised by Honourable Mainir has absolutely nothing to do with what the Honourable Groenewald has raised. And I will not respond to that question at the time when it is up. You know what?
Honourable members, you are out of order yourself. You can't be screaming like that.
Excuse me.
You are out of order, Honourable member.
I will not be intimidated by you. Not at all. Never. I will not be you in particular, you will not intimidate me.
Honourable Minister,
no
don't
ways. I'll answer the question as required. I'll respond in an appropriate manner. But the screaming by the males on your other side, it's an embarrassment.
Remember
it's
the
fine.
Minister speaking.
I'm not going to allow you to bully me. Sorry.
Honourable.
Point of order, Speaker.
Honourable members.
Deputy Speaker, point of order.
Honourable member, Honourable Chief Whip, the Minister in her earlier response made reference to the basis on which she would be able to respond to the review, to the remarks she made about it. If you are unhappy with that response, it makes it difficult for us if you all want to scream her down her throat. So let's get to the responses that are given here, and if we are unhappy with them, let's deal with that. But don't all scream and try and push things down anybody's throat here, please. Honourable Minister? Right.
Deputy
Honourable,
Speaker.
I'm talking to the Minister, please. Take your seat. Honourable Minister, will you respond?
Austerity measures which have been put in place in the department. Thank you, Honourable Mainir.
Honourable Swart.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable Minister, whilst the ACDP appreciates your response and that the department is underfunded, and we also share concerns about the irregular expenditure or the wasted expenditure, as pointed out by other speakers, surely, as I've pointed out in many of the Defence Force budget votes over many years, and that is that we as parliamentarians need to accept responsibility for the underfunding of the Department of Defence because we passed the appropriation bill. Now, surely we also are aware of the Money Bills Amendment Procedure and Related Matters Act, and that there's a process in terms of that act that we can apply to the Appropriations Committee through to National Treasury to increase or to reallocate funds. And surely we as parliamentarians also need to accept responsibility for the underfunding of the Defence Department. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Minister.
Thank you very much, Honourable Swart. You are correct. We should all take responsibility for the challenges which have been there as a result of shortages of budget in the Department of Defence. And everything is being done to make sure that National Treasury in the next budgeting cycle provides us with the necessary resources. But as I said earlier on, and I would like to repeat this as you would know, that there is no way in which you can secure additional finances from National Treasury without having a compelling business case. And that is what we are trying to do. I agree with you. Indeed, there has been a shortage of financial resources on the side of the South African National Defence Force. But equally, I have maintained when I discussed with the generals that much as we are talking about shortage of finance and requesting for more finance, but if there's equally under expenditure of the allocated resources, then it poses a problem and it makes it difficult for us to secure more funding. Because truth of the matter, indeed, there are areas where there has been under expenditure in the Defence Force, and it makes our case very difficult. And thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Singh.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I just want to follow in the vein of Honourable Swart to indicate to you, Honourable Minister, that the Honourable Minister of Finance, who's seated in front of you, was the person who actually spearheaded the Money Bills Act, which Honourable Swart referred to. And I think we as parliamentarians must not be under the mistaken impression that it is National Treasury that allocates funds, because the responsibility lies with us, as Honourable Swart has indicated. And we as parliamentarians should be the arbiter. National Treasury is only the distributor. But I think you, Honourable Minister, need to make sure that a credible business case is presented before the Parliamentary Committee, which would support your case, then take it to the Standing Committee on Appropriations, eventually back to this House, so this House can decide whether the Department of Defence gets more money or less money. And I think that's a process that we would encourage you to follow. Thank you.
Honourable Singh, thank you very much. You are correct. You are right. In fact, you'll recall that last year, one of the matters which we raised in October was that the allocation for the Defence Force in some of the areas which we had identified as priority was actually cut down tremendously. And therefore, I do agree with you that it is my responsibility with the team in the South African National Defence Force to work on a compelling business case. And that is what we are doing. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. Honourable Ramakatsa.
Thank you, the Honourable Speaker.
Sorry?
I would like to know whether the Minister acknowledges that in the whole SADC region, the only strong Navy is the SA Navy. Secondly, I would like to know whether the Minister is taking cognizance of news reports of July which reported that South Africa is in dire need of ships and aeroplanes to combat poaching in waters off the coast. The South African Maritime Safety Authority, SAMSA, has said, SAMSA monitors the movement of vessels off the South African coast, but the government agency said that even if it spotted suspicious activity, it was not always able to physically respond. In light of this, whether the minister then recognizes the need to utilize SA Navy in sea patrols, seeing there is no foreseeable war, and that the Navy has not fought a war since World War II. I thank you, the Honourable Speaker.
Honourable Minister.
Honourable Member, to be honest, this is a new question, but I will answer you. You are correct that the South African Navy is indeed the biggest within the region. But the South African Navy does not operate in isolation from the rest of the navies in patrolling the coast of the region. We now have, in fact, what is called a maritime security strategy, which maritime security strategy has been developed by the entire region. As a result of the maritime security strategy, we now have a trilateral agreement between ourselves, Mozambique, and Tanzania for the patrolling of the Atlantic coast to prevent piracy. But in addition,
Honorable Minister, just ignore the interjectors. Please go ahead, finish your question, your response.
Anyway, the Atlantic Ocean, in this instance, if I come from the south, the Atlantic Ocean is to my right. And of course, we equally are developing relations and memorandum of understanding with Namibians and Angolans for purposes of patrolling the Atlantic Ocean. It was the Indian Ocean, the Atlantic Ocean up to the Gulf of Guinea. So you are correct, Honorable Member, that in terms of patrol, in terms of border safeguarding, it is one of the critical priorities which we have as a defense right now. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. I think we crossed the boundary of the number of supplementary questions, but we'll make up time. Let's go to the next question, which is question number 35, being asked by Honorable Gamede to the Minister of Defense and Military Veterans.
Thank you very much, Honorable Gamede. The review of revisiting of the concepts of operations, Copper and Corona entails ensuring an improved utilization of resources, given that both operations are dependent on the cooperation with the South African Development Community, SADC states. One at sea and another looking at our land borders. In this regard, I've directed that the Military Command Council discuss the benefits that can be derived from a holistic strategy for the protection of all our borders. Thus, ensure in a single interface for planning and budgeting, but most importantly, for interaction with other SADC partners with whom we share these borders. This directive is in line with our trajectory that a military appreciation should be done to ensure a holistic strategy to protect our country from air, land, and sea. Details of the military command's assessment will be submitted to us with regards to the areas that require buttressing on the troops, and will be submitted to us once it is finalized, and we will accordingly share with the honorable members. Thanks.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Mainir.
Speaker, the defense...
Sorry. You see, the new ones are making a mistake. Honorable Gamete, you have a follow-up question.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. I'm Honorable Bongo. I'm standing on behalf of Gamete.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Oh, you're as new as me. Go ahead and that.
Thank you. The South African region, Honorable Minister, faces challenges of ensuring that we have maritime security, especially in combating piracy and the smuggling of weapons, contraband, people, and goods. Of particular importance is the protection of maritime trade and resources, including fisheries, seabed, minerals, energy resources. However, many people and littoral states lack capacity to monitor the maritime areas. Honorable Minister, would you kindly share with the House how the SADC countries are ensuring that maritime security capacity is enhanced in the coastal countries? Thank you.
Okay, proceed, Minister.
Thank you very much, Honorable Member. Honorable Member, I must say that SADC, you'll note that much as in the Indian Ocean, there have been several incidents of piracy activity in the Horn of Africa. But you will not note that in the borders of our region here, precisely because of the agreements which we have reached and the strategy that we have developed as a region, not just as South Africa, we have been able to prevent piracy activity coming into the shores of the region. You will know that, as I said earlier on, there's a tripartite agreement between ourselves, Mozambique, and Tanzania, where we are located in the Mozambican Channel so that we can prevent activity from coming in. So in other words, our presence in that area has actually served as a deterrent from piracy and from actually going in and fishing in our shores. But as a region, I can assure you that is why now on the other side, Namibia, Angola, and South Africa are looking at ways of protecting the shores on the Atlantic Ocean. It is because we realize that there is no single country which can deal with this particular matter. It can only be done when we work together as the different states in a cohesive manner. I hope I've made sense.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Thank you, Honorable Minister, for that answer. Honorable Minister, you've just answered a question on budget shortages. Now, my question to you is, and you may not have the answer here, but maybe you can provide it to the House, is what kind of cost-sharing arrangements and protocols exist between the SADC countries in terms of performing this very key strategic operation?
Oh, okay. All right. Don't worry.
Thank you, Honorable Singh. It's a very important question, but may I request that I come and brief you in the committee because I do not have that answer right now. Thank you very much.
Okay. Honorable Menir. Thank you, Minister. Menir.
Now,
my apologies for earlier on. Yeah.
Minister, the Defence Forces Border Safeguarding Mission Operation Corona, which is referred to in the question, is vital to our national security. But the fact is we have more bodyguards protecting ministers than we have soldiers protecting our landward borders. We have about 5,400 bodyguards protecting ministers, but we only have about 1,700 soldiers protecting 5,000 kilometers of our landward borders. Will the minister therefore explain why we have more bodyguards protecting ministers than we have soldiers protecting our borders? Because the impression that is created is that the minister thinks protecting ministers is more important than protecting our borders. Thank you.
I thought you and I understand that I'm responsible for defense in the country. I'm not responsible for VIP protection. I have absolutely nothing to do with the police. And you, having served in the Defense Force, would actually understand that better, that the Defense Force is not responsible for VIP protection. You never did VIP protection. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. No, listen here.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
Yes, Honorable Steyn.
Honorable Deputy Speaker.
What's the point of order you're rising on, sir? And please don't speak before we recognize you, please.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, firstly, I called for your attention to myself. I had not spoken a word. Secondly, the gallery there is also supporting here, saying, please, clapping hands and making noise. Can you please bring it to their attention? I thank you.
Thank you. Honorable, order, honorable members, order. Honorable members, Honorable Menir, it's Honorable staying on my list, sir. I'm afraid she's on the top. Yeah.
Speaker, I apologize. I evidently pushed the wrong thing.
No. On my list is stay.
Deputy Speaker, this house is run by rules, and it's within our rules to raise order in terms of what should happen. Can you please make a ruling on what Honorable Gadia has spoken about here? Before you continue, please. Don't turn this into something else, okay?
Honorable Shivambo, this is the second time you literally instruct me to make a ruling. Please don't do that, okay? I will apply the rules as and when I see it appropriate. I have to make sure that the rules are applied appropriately when I do it. The chair will make the rulings, please. Just remember that. You can make your observations, allow me to make the rulings. If you make the rulings, I will not make them. Okay, let's proceed. Now, honorable DA members, you must make up your mind who's speaking between you, please.
Chairperson, I would like to ask a supplementary. I pushed the honourable member's button, but I am the person who would like to ask the supplementary.
Finish that, please. Yeah.
Thank you. Now, arising from the minister's reply, yesterday the minister was, and it's well known that the minister is the head of the security cluster in cabinet. Today the minister can't talk about policing, but yesterday the minister had a press conference on policing in Parliament. So the minister is able to answer my question. And so I pose my question again. Why are there more bodyguards protecting ministers than there are soldiers protecting our landward borders?
Honorable Menir, you are correct. I'm the chair of the security cluster. But the question in the order paper right now, in your question paper, has nothing to do with VIP protection. If anything, today is an opportunity for you to direct questions to Minister. You should have had that question in this question paper and raise it with the Minister of Police. He is right here in this same room. Thank you very much, Honorable Member.
In the absence of any further supplementary questions, we move to the next question. Honorable Dudley, to the Minister of International Relations and Cooperation. Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, South African government views the unfolding events in Iraq in a very serious light, particularly the heinous, barbaric criminal actions of the so-called Islamic State, which amount to gross violations of human rights and ethnic and religious cleansing that is contrary to the UN Human Rights Charter and therefore constitute crimes against humanity. Moreover, the South African government is deeply concerned about the spillover of the conflict and violence resulting from increased terrorist activities of IS to the neighboring countries, especially Syria, as it is currently the case, and the region as a whole. The South African government joins the UN Human Rights Chief, Navi Pillay, and all peace-loving and progressive nations in condemning in the strongest terms these barbaric and terrorist acts of the so-called Islamic State and call for support to the government and people of Iraq in their fight against this terrorist scourge. The South African government reiterates the Fortaleza Declaration of the 6th BRICS Summit of July 15, 2014, which emphasizes strong support for the Iraqi government in its efforts to overcome the crises, uphold national sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as urging all regional and global players to refrain from interference that will further deepen the crisis and to support the Iraqi government and the people of Iraq in their efforts to overcome this crisis and build a stable, democratic, peaceful, inclusive, and united Iraq. Thank you.
Honorable Dudley, follow up. Thank you, Minister, Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Chair. Speaker, Honourable Deputy Minister, the ACDP welcomes your statement. It wasn't more than a week ago that the national spokesperson for Iraqi Christians, Mark Arabo, told CNN's Jonathan Mann that they are systematically beheading children and mothers and fathers. The world hasn't seen an evil like this for a generation. There's actually a park in Mosul where they've beheaded children and put their heads on a stick. Honourable Minister, we have been asking, and people have been asking, what more can be done to ensure the global community, including ourselves, does not turn a blind eye to this horrendous situation. We very much appreciate your statement, but people need to understand what practically does that mean in terms of what is being done, how will that pressure actually play out in this situation. Our words must speak loudly and clearly, condemning attacks on religious freedoms. And our freedom of religion will not hold up on its own. If we stand by while global terrorism destroys freedom of religion around the world, we will stand alone when we are under siege. Thank you.
Honorable Minister.
Deputy Speaker, we can only agree 100% with the Honourable Dudley's sentiments and comments, and I want to assure her that I have no doubt in my mind that the global community views this matter in a very, very serious light and abhors it as much as she does.
Thank you. Honorable B.A. Khadebe.
Deputy Speaker, this monster which is known as the Islamic State is killing people in Iraq for their religious beliefs. The people who are affected are both Christians and Muslims, and they are city people. According to the UN Charter of Human Rights, this is an ethnic cleansing which is crime against humanity. Will the South African government consider sponsoring a UN resolution to hold these murderers to the International Criminal Court and also apply sanctions against the people who are supporting them? Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, to the Honourable Khadebe, yes, we will give serious consideration to sponsoring a UN resolution in this regard. And I agree with the Honourable Member that efforts must be made to ascertain who are funding the IS.
Thank you. Honorable Litchfield Chabalala.
Thank you, Honourable Chair. While the EFF is vehemently opposed to the tactics of ISIS, it is also an open fact that the invasion of Iraq in 2003 is a debatable issue, especially because the reason upon which it was based, which is weapons of mass destruction, was found to be an international lie. Does the minister then agree that Iraq was a better country before the invasion? And if so, is South Africa on record on this matter somewhere? Because the invasion of weaker countries by stronger ones cannot go on uncondemned. It is said that it only takes a few good men to be quiet for evil to prosper. Thank you.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I'm glad the Honourable Chabalala raises this matter because many of us have been asking ourselves the very same question as to whether Iraq was a better country than it is today. I'm not in a position to give answers to that. I will leave that to the analysts like those who are interjecting when someone is speaking. We agree with the Honourable Chabalala of the EFF that the invasion of Iraq was based on a blatant lie. And so the question then we have to ask is what is happening in Iraq today not a direct consequence of that illegal invasion? And so these are the matters that we have to raise internationally and in forums like these so that perhaps those who were responsible at the time can be brought to book.
Honorable S.V. Kalen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honourable
Deputy Minister, earlier on when I posed a question to you, you said it is not policy to have megaphone diplomacy. And I submit to you now that in an instance like this, megaphone diplomacy is absolutely necessary. South Africa's international relations policy states that human rights is a key pillar. Regardless of where in the world human rights abuses occur, South Africa has a responsibility to stand up against such actions, especially against the violence against the women and children who are being forced to undergo female circumcision, or as we call it, female genital mutilation. And this is indeed true, that the current crisis in Iraq, where we cannot afford to be silent. So bring on the megaphones. Minister, are there any South Africans at risk as a result of the actions of ISIS? And if yes, what is your department doing to ensure the safety of such persons? I thank you.
Honorable members, keep to your time, please. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Deputy Speaker, I stand by the statement I made earlier about megaphone diplomacy and the Democratic Alliance. The situation in Iraq does not require diplomacy. The situation in Iraq is crying out for a different kind of solution. And so the international community has to put their heads together and decide what that solution means. Now, as regards to whether there are South Africans at risk in Iraq, we have no information as far as that is concerned. Well, if the Honorable David Maynier has the answers, then the Honorable Kalyan should speak to him.
Who's the next one? No, this thing's gone. Okay. Over. Okay, which one? Okay, question 37. Okay, all right, chat. Let's move on to question 37, as to the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker, and thank you, Honourable Member, for the question. I wish to inform you, Honourable Member, that we are continuing to establish new small claims courts countrywide. One of our objectives is to ensure that there is at least one functioning and active small claims court in each and every one of South Africa's 393 magisterial districts. Two provinces, namely Mpumalanga and Gauteng, are already fully compliant with a small claims court in each of their magisterial districts principle. To date, we have already created 306 small claims courts countrywide, with another 7 to be established soon. It can be noted that a significant number of the 306 small claims courts are in rural areas, and the majority of the small claims courts still to be created will be in the rural areas. I will make available a list of all the small claims courts already established, as well as a list of those that need to be established. I also would like to inform the Honourable Member that we are continuously engaging communities and raising awareness regarding the existence and role of the small claims courts in their respective areas. Small claims courts have always formed part of our outreach activities, which include radio programs where communities are briefed on how the small claims courts function and how these courts may assist them in the resolution of their small civil disputes. Media statements are disseminated widely whenever new courts are gazetted, and community newspapers are in particular targeted for coverage in the smaller and rural areas. We have also developed small claims courts, brochures, and pamphlets that explain this court's processes and how to access them. These information documents are printed in all the official languages and are distributed countrywide to all the courts and other relevant institutions such as municipal offices, etc. The brochures are also accessible on the department's website, doj.gov.za. I thank you.
When you follow up, Honorable Majake.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, thank you. Minister, we take note of the progress made in building small claims courts, which allow instituting minor civil claims in a speedy, affordable, and simple manner without using attorneys in much needy communities. Is there any communication or public relations strategy developed to monitor whether rural communities understand how to access these courts? The department should not only depend on posters, papers, pamphlets, brochures, and information on the department's website that might not be user-friendly nor practical for rural communities. The department should also provide such information to schools, clinics, police stations, correctional centers, where it can be shared and easily understood. Thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Thank you, Honorable Member. The next is Honorable W. Horn.
I have not yet
the Minister.
responded.
Okay. All right. Sorry, Minister. You want to respond to that? I thought it's a comment. Go ahead.
Well, thank you for that follow-up question or comment, Honorable Member. Yes, indeed. Over and above what I've alluded to, GCIS is doing the distribution of pamphlets on behalf of the department. They distribute everywhere once a month, including the same places mentioned by the Honorable Member, and also to two song centers, as well as community radio outreach, which are organized for free coverage in all the affected communities. This is, for example, happening in the Eastern Cape and is targeted at making sure that communities have access to information in their own languages. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable W.H. Horn.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. The DA fully supports all efforts to enhance access to justice in South Africa as a basic human right enshrined in our Constitution. However, Deputy Speaker, one specific South African has been denied access to justice for 5 years now. In his capacity as one of the main political guardians of our Constitution, the question to the Honourable Minister is what he will do after the so-called spy tapes are handed over by the NPA to the DA in the near future, after the 700 charges of corruption are reinstituted against the President, to prevent further subversion of our Constitution and ensure that President Zuma gets the day in court for which the President has, in his own words, yearned for now for more than 5 years. Thank you.
Honourable Minister.
Speaker, the Honourable Member knows very well that this is not a legitimate follow-up question to an otherwise legitimate question. Thank you.
Honourable Mutshekga. Honourable Mutshekga.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, thank you, Honourable Minister. In the light of the fact that
Honorable Speaker, I think you called me at the wrong time.
You're unlikely to come back. Thank you, Honorable. It's okay. It's okay. It's all right,
Honorable Speaker.
Yes.
I'm doing a follow-up question to Honorable Bredenbach.
Late. Your name is already here, but it's okay. Let's go to Honorable Singh.
Thank you, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Minister, we appreciate the very good progress that is being made by your department in establishing the small claims court. And I think when the information that you've alluded to is available to us, we'll be able to ascertain the exact locality of these courts. But what I'd like to know, Honorable Minister, through you, Honorable Deputy Speaker, is are there particular challenges that the department experiences in establishing these small claims courts in rural areas, vis-a-vis the availability, easy availability of commissioners to preside over the small claims court? And does it cost the department more to get these commissioners to go into the rural areas in terms of subsistence and traveling allowances? Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Minister.
Thank you for the question. You may be aware that commissioners who serve as presiding officers on these courts do so voluntarily and without remuneration. In generally economically depraved communities, practitioners would find it difficult to donate their time for free to do this kind of work. It certainly is a factor, and I recall when we were in Bethlehem to establish a sexual offenses court on the 15th of this month, when we held an imbizo, one of the community members specifically raised a complaint that her matter took long to be finalized because there wasn't a commissioner available to deal with the matter. We're certainly looking and monitoring at those situations to make sure that in all areas of South Africa, we have enough volunteers who are willing to preside over this courts. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Machake. No, why? What, your machine is reflecting people here.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. It was for the question that I've actually responded to already.
Yeah, that's why I'm complaining to the table here. That's okay. I suppose the same with you, Honorable Member from the EFF. Well, let's assume that the supplementary questions are over. We'll move to the next question, which is the question.
Honorable Speaker.
Oh. Yours is still there?
Yes, I'm supplementing.
Okay, all right, go ahead. I thought you too, like all the others. Yeah.
Thank you, Honorable Speaker. Just a follow-up on the question, the aims of the establishment of this small claims court is for easy access to the poor and indigent persons. Just a question to the Minister, is he thinking of establishing the law in those rural areas for indigenous people in their own language, meaning not a translation from English? Could they access the law in the language which is indigenous to them?
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. You may recall that during our budget speech presentation, we alluded, amongst others, to efforts that we are putting in place to ensure that indigenous languages are introduced as languages of record in court proceedings to make sure that there is transformation in our judicial system to the effect that we introduce the element of indigenization of our judicial system. So certainly there is a program to gradually gravitate towards ensuring, especially as we get more presiding officers appointed, whether it's judges or magistrates, who speak indigenous languages, to ensure that litigants are able to litigate directly in their own mother tongues without interpretation or translation. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. The next question is still to the Minister of Justice, asked by Honorable Breitenbach.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Honorable Member, I have not requested the President to suspend anyone from the NPA at all. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable Horn. Oh, Breitenbach. Hey, you get your technology up.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Mr. Minister, seeing as you have not made this recommendation, perhaps you would share with us what steps it is that you're taking to mitigate the reputational damage and the credibility issues that arise as a result of the behaviour of these three officials who hold extremely high posts in the NPA and who have been found to have deliberately misled the High Court and the Supreme Court of Appeal.
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I have indeed received correspondence from the Office of the NDPP requesting me to make the recommendations as the member has indicated. I have, in return, written back to the NDPP to clarify certain matters, including actions on his part as the relevant officials are accountable to him since the judgments concerned as to what measures he put in place to correct the situation that the courts had pointed out, and I'm still awaiting his response to enable me to finalize this, my decision in regard to this matter. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Horn.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In follow-up to the Honourable Minister, one of the Deputy National Directors of Public Prosecuting in question has been in the news for allegedly not having been admitted as an advocate of the High Court in South Africa, which obviously is a legislative requirement for holding the office. Has any inquiry been launched to ascertain if she has been admitted as an advocate? If not, why not? And if so, what was the outcome of the inquiry?
Honourable Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The matter has not been brought to me. It is my understanding that those matters are raised by certain structures with certain structures, but at this stage, I have not been involved because the matter has not yet come before me. Thank you.
Thank you. Honourable Mutsecha.
Minister, Honorable Minister, can you tell this House whether your duty is to monitor the media and set in place processes based on things that are in the media which have not come officially to your desk?
Go ahead, Honourable Minister. It's up to you. Order, Honourable Members. The Minister is waiting for you to keep quiet so that he responds.
Should I proceed, Deputy Speaker?
Go ahead, Ned.
Yes, I indeed agree with you that whilst there is a system in the department to monitor the media on matters that relate to justice, we do not necessarily respond to every issue that arises in the media, especially in the light of the formal processes through which matters can or are actually raised for resolution by ourselves. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you, Honourable Minister. We move to the next question. It's to the Minister of My list says police. 39. There is the Minister to the Minister of Home Affairs. Asked by Honorable Don Gumede. Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. The response to the question is as follows. The department has taken the following steps to establish a national identity system. As previously indicated, we are in the process of implementing a modernization program for our core IT systems. Phase 1 is being implemented, and this entails the automation of the application processes for both IDs as well as passports, and they are made even more secure. One of the Phase 2 projects is the development of a national identity system, which will incorporate and integrate the functionality of the National Population Register, the Harness database, as well as other databases that contain the biographical information of non-South African citizens. The intention here is to have a single and integrated identity system for citizens, permanent residents, asylum seekers, permit holders, and visitors. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Gumede.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. Honorable Deputy Speaker, comparably, the National Integrated System for IDs is has one of the best security features worldwide, and we thank our government for that. Coming to my supplementary question, my question is, has our implementation gone according to plan? And if so, what are the details? If not, what are the problems? I thank you, Deputy Speaker.
Honorable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, Deputy Speaker. Through you, the implementation of the modernization process is quite intricate, and it entails quite a lot of planning and development. It is a multi-pronged process, and yes, in the initial stages, in the implementation of Phase 1, we've had to pilot in many respects some of these technologies, and we've had to tweak them as we've implemented them. Members may know that at the moment we are currently rolling out infrastructure to our various offices around the country to ensure that our capabilities in regard to accepting online applications for the new smart card is in itself a major challenge. I may add that there are certain first world countries that have failed in this regard, and we're very, very proud, as the member is, of the team that have been working on this program. And we're particularly proud that most of the modernization program is developed in-house as far as possible. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable Ficklen.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. In his budget speech, the Minister of Home Affairs indicated that 300,000 smart ID cards have been issued since the introduction of the new system about a year ago. At the rate of 300,000 cards a year, it will take approximately 166 years to roll out smart IDs to all South Africans. What exact this situation is that not all Home Affairs offices have the capacity to deal with smart ID card applications. What steps are being taken to ensure that all offices in the country will have capacity to issue smart ID cards, and how many years does he think it will take for full rollout of the smart ID card system? Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Honourable Deputy Minister.
Thank you very much, through you, Deputy Speaker. Let me just say that the 300,000 smart cards were issued out of the pilot phase, where we are testing as we extend the infrastructure of our IT capabilities. We do have a deadline that we have set for 5 years for the full rollout of the program. But these will not only be dealt with at Home Affairs offices. There will be joint ventures that we will announce in due course related to points at which South Africans can go and apply at convenient spots throughout the country for their smart ID cards. In addition to which, we expect to roll out and test a mobile solution as well, so that we can actually take those the equipment required to places like schools where 16-year-olds are entitled to apply for and receive their smart ID cards. So the deadline that we've given ourselves and the period for full rollout of the smart ID card itself is 5 years. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable Klengwa.
Thank you very much, Honourable Deputy Speaker. Honourable Deputy Minister, I just want to find out that in relation to the fight against crime, what prioritization have you applied to ensuring that the safety of children, especially those in child-headed households, are a priority, and to ensure that they actually speedily access the services that you are providing, given that they are such a vulnerable sector? I heard you listing all the intended recipients, and to find out the extent of the level within which you are working with the Department of Social Development in this regard to ensure that we actually secure young children who are vulnerable to drug and human trafficking. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. Through you, we work very closely with the Department of Social Development, Honourable Member, and certainly this has to be the case, particularly with regard to children who head up households, because without the necessary documentation, identity documentation, they're not able to access the grants on which they rely very much on. So the issue that you raised, though, relates to the smart card rollout to such children, this vulnerable category of children. And again, that would be probably linked to the rollout of the mobile solution that I was speaking about. Because oftentimes these particular children are found in very remote parts of our country where Home Affairs offices are not necessarily accessible. Having said that, of course, child-headed households does not necessarily mean that those children are also not at schools. And schools are indeed one of the priority areas that we have earmarked in the rollout of the smart ID cards.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Minister. Honourable members, the time allocated for questions has expired. Outstanding replies received will be printed in Hansard. We go to notices of motion. We now come to that. Does any member have a notice of motion? Yes, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Deputy Speaker. I move on behalf of the ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates the need for active citizenry and social activism in order for our democracy and development to flourish. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. Does any other member have a notice of motion?
Deputy Speaker, I hereby give notice that at the next sitting of this House, that this House debates the Kader Asmal report on Chapter 9 institutions.
Okay. Any other member? Yes, Honourable Member.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. I rise on behalf of the EFF that the House in the next sitting debate the quality of healthcare in black residential areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other member? Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I move on behalf of ANC that in its next sitting, the House debates ways to prevent looting and destruction of property during service delivery protest. Thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you. Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, Honourable Speaker. On behalf of the ANC, I'd like to move that at the next sitting of the House, we debate vigorously the sports, arts and culture, heritage, and that goes with it. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable Chief Whip.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I hereby give notice to the next sitting day of this House. I shall move as follows, that this House debates the assault on parliamentary sovereignty by members of the executive in terms of trying to militarize the parliamentary zone.
Honorable member at the back there with the paper.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. I rise on behalf of the EFF that the House, in its next sitting, debate the need for 100% increase of social grants. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable, any other notice of motion? Yes, honorable member.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of ANC, that in its next sitting, the House debates improving rural safety and policing to strengthen security in rural areas and farms across South Africa. I so move. Thank you.
Thank you, honorable member. Honorable member, honorable Kengwa.
Thank you very much, Honorable Deputy Speaker. I shall move on both the Inkatha Freedom Party, the next of the House, that the House debates the burgeoning of informal settlements in urban areas.
Okay. Honorable member at the back.
Thanks, Honorable Speaker. On behalf of the EFF, that the House in its next sitting debate the ineffective public policies on youth development in South Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Honorable member.
Thank you, Chairperson. I move on behalf of the National Freedom Party that in its next sitting, this House debates the continuous increase of electricity prices and its impact to the unemployed. Thank you.
Okay. Honorable member.
Thank you, Chair. I'd like to move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that we debate the subject of corrective rape. Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Honorable Chief Whip.
I move that in the next sitting of this House debates the rhino poaching and the effect it has on our heritage.
Thank you. Honorable member at the back there.
Thank you, Deputy Speaker. On behalf of the United Democratic Movement, I move that at the next sitting, this House should debate the situation around the taxi industry in South Africa. Thank you.
Honorable member. Honorable member, Sandra.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move on behalf of the Democratic Alliance that during the next sitting of this House, we debate the unsafe mud and other schools in our country.
Thank you, honourable member. No other notices of motion. Let's move to motions without notice. Any motions without notice? Any motions without notice? Chief Whip.
Honourable Deputy Speaker, I move that that the House knows that on Tuesday, 26 August 2014, the Gift of the Givers relief team left South Africa after receiving safe passage to enter Gaza and give assistance to victims of war. Further notes that the permission was secured by the Department of International Relations and Cooperation for the NGO to safely cross the Rafah border with all its supplies. Acknowledges that the team will only be taking specialist doctors to Gaza following restrictions imposed by the Egyptian government that only 10 personnel be permitted to cross the Gaza Strip. Recalls that plans to send this team into the war-torn area have been in the pipeline for almost 2 months as the NGO struggle to get permission from the Egyptian government. believes that the arrival of the Gift of the Givers team in Palestine will provide urgent medical relief where it has been so limited. Congratulates South African NGO for continuing to impress the world with the kind of humanitarian and life-saving work they are doing.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objections, agreed to. Are there any further notices without motion? Motions without notice here. Go ahead. Chief Whip. Eh? Is it finished? You finished? Oh.
Honorable Deputy Speaker, I move that the House knows that the South African netball team, Banyana won 4-0. Normally, it's a soccer team, Banyana. It's not a netball team. So I'm correcting myself. Won 4-0 against Zambia in an international friendly match in Lusaka on Sunday, 24 August 2014. Believes that Banyana have given a brilliant performance and have outplayed Zambia. Further believes that Banyana's victory against Zambia will boost their confidence as they prepare themselves for the African Women's Championship in Namibia in October 2014. Recalls that they have won against Zambia, Namibia, and have drawn against Zimbabwe, and congratulates Banyana on their sterling performance and wishing them more success in their future endeavors.
If there are no objections, I put the motion. No objection, agreed to. Any further motions without notice? Oh, no further motions. Let's move to that sounds like it's the conclusion of the business of the day, and the House is...
Sorry,
adjourned.
Speaker, before you adjourn the House.
Yes.
May I address you in terms of Rule 1091?
Go ahead, sir.
Deputy Speaker, we had oral questions to ministers in the House today. And I think that we need to note that there were only 2 members of Cabinet present in the House to answer questions today. And I really think if we're going to take question time seriously in this House, that ministers need to prioritise their diaries to ensure that they're here to be held accountable. Thank you.
Okay. Honourable members, that is here. That concludes the business of the day. The House is adjourned.